Hello, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the very first episode of the Healing Society podcast. I wanted to create this podcast as a space for people to share their journey of spiritual awakening and healing and just life stories and just capturing the beauty in a good story. Today's episode involves a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Christy. We met through a mutual friend online, and we've actually never met in person, but we've become really great friends, soul sisters. She even talks about this a little bit in the podcast, but it's a really cool story, and there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from the story, and just it's really interesting how she stumbled upon the spiritual path that she's on now. So grab something to drink and get comfortable and enjoy.
I'm really excited about today, and I'm really excited to get your story. I've got a few questions that I wrote down this morning, just as kind of like a guide or whatever. But we'll just jump right into it. And I wanted to start with, I want to start with your childhood. I want to get like a really good foundation. Like, what's your background? What was your childhood like? And whatever capacity you want to share about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Not many people ask me about my childhood, so I kind of really like to talk about it. I had a really great childhood. We were feral children, so we were just allowed to do whatever we wanted to do. We didn't have to clean our rooms, we didn't have to clean the house, we didn't have to do dishes. Um, we didn't have to do any of that, which as a kid sounds really exciting and amazing, until you get a little older and you realize that that's not it's chaotic. It's a chaotic environment that you grow up in when no one is doing dishes or cleaning or doing any of that stuff. So it was feral and amazing and chaotic all at once. My mom and dad were married until the day that my dad passed away. So I was very fortunate to grow up with both parents in the house. We were Baptist family through and through. We were there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesdays. My grandpa was the deacon. My cousin was the preacher. Like it was, it, it was crazy. My mom went to school to become a nurse, and she just retired at 70. And so she was an oncology nurse for a lot of my childhood. So she worked 12-hour shifts. And my dad
Mhm.
pretty much raised us because my mom was the breadwinner of our family. My dad had a difficult childhood. He grew up in an alcoholic home, and it was probably by today's standards, probably a little abusive. So my dad kind of went the complete opposite direction with us, and he just allowed us to be free and like really never pushed us to be a certain thing or one way. Like I really, growing up, truly believed I could be president of the United States if I wanted to. Like, I mean, you know, um, and we spent a lot of time doing ranchy stuff, so on horses, riding and roping and doctoring and working cattle, which is not something a lot of people know or would imagine about me. You see me, you don't think ranchy girl, but that was a lot of how I grew up. And so I was born in Kansas, and we moved to Colorado when I was 15, and we just left everything behind and moved. My dad wanted to move, my mom wanted to move, and Colorado was really a beautiful experience for me because I had to make friends. I literally I had an amazing family, both a church family and friends and everything, and I left it all behind, and we all had to start over. And we ended up living in a little town outside of Fort Collins called LaPorte, which was a great place to grow up. You had the bad parts of town. LaPorte was on the outskirts enough, and it was on its way to 287 was on its way to Laramie, so there was a lot of drugs that got ran through there, because the cops weren't there. So like there was one part of town that you didn't go to, and so like for the longest time, I really thought that LaPorte just kind of ended where this one restaurant was, because you didn't really go past that unless you were looking for something you know probably weren't supposed to find. Um, and yeah, I mean, I did acting as a child. Like not, I mean, like local plays and stuff like that, but uh I wanted to become a photographer, so my dad went out and bought me a Pentax K1000 used and a bunch of film, and he's like, let's do it. Never I am self-taught in everything. I've not really taken formal classes for much. And yeah, so just a good childhood, both sides of my family. I'm the only one, me and my one uncle, of both sides of our family that is divorced, of everyone. So, it's a family that takes things pretty seriously and like, really loves each other and takes commitment seriously. So
Mm.
yeah, I've got a brother who's 3 years younger than me. So I was the oldest, and kind of a lot of I would say that I kind of raised my brother a little bit.
Mhm.
Just my parents were amazing parents, but they had a very different idea of parenting, and so we were like raised but not raised. Like feral is really the best. Like we're just like okay,
Right, wherever the wind blows, right? Is that kind of
yes.
like what childhood was like? And um, so with that, did you guys find that like were you guys pretty good, or did you guys get into any trouble as siblings, or like what was the dynamic of your relationship with your brother?
My brother was the snitch, man. I tell you what, like my parents could look at him cross-eyed and he would bawl and tell everything he knew and make some shit up just to be on the safe side. He'd just be like, "Ah," I was the one that was like, man, I wasn't telling anything. And so, if they're like, Christy, you're gonna get a whooping when you get home, I'd be like, sweet, bring it on. I mean, I just, and I think that's why my dad, he always said it was because my brother was a boy. And again, my dad was raised in that generation. We are of that generation. Boys and girls were treated different, so it wasn't like my dad was being a horrible dad. I think though my dad knew that I was the one that was gonna get in a lot of trouble if he didn't kind of corral that pretty quickly. My brother and I so I have two of my favorite stories about, and this kind of tells you everything. Like my brother, like I could pick on my brother, but nobody else dare to pick on my brother. So the two stories that stand out the most that will give you the best idea of our dynamic was that I was at church camp. We went to church camp every year. My brother went, my cousin went. It was my cousin's first time going to church camp. My grandpa was the one of the chaperones, and my grandpa was like so well respected. Everybody just kind of, I mean, if my grandpa said it was okay, it was all good. So we were walking to uh so we went to church like 3 times a day, and we were walking to the night service. And of course the girls were on one side and the boys were on another side. So we were walking over to go to church, and this kid that I had grown up with, his name was Andy, was picking on my brother and Casey, like relentlessly. And I'm short. I am like 5 foot tall. And at this point, I was probably like 4'9". I mean, I wasn't even fully grown. So, he was picking on my brother really bad. And so I got really mad. And the deal was there was no fighting at church camp. Like no fighting, no cussing, no any of that. Like you could get kicked out and asked to go home if you fought. And everybody knew this. And so when I seen Andy picking on my brother, I walked right up to him and I'm like, come here, come here. And he was not the brightest bulb. Like he was like 6 foot tall. So I mean, like I wasn't reaching any part of him, but he leaned his head all the way down and I slapped him so hard across the face that my handprint was like welted, like it left a welt on his face. So he's like, "I'm telling my dad," and he like ran off because he was with a sister church. And so his dad told my grandpa, and my grandpa had to smooth it over. And he's like, "I've got her. Don't worry. Like, this won't happen again." And he came and he asked me, he goes, "Did you slap Andy?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir, I did." And he goes, "Why?" And I go, "He was picking on Russell and Casey. And like, you don't do that." And my grandpa's like, "Don't do it again." And it was 30 years later that my granny told me that that was like my grandpa's proudest moment of me. Like when he came home, he was like, "She slapped Andy because he was picking on the boys and she wasn't having it." And and so, and that's really kind of it. The other one, there was this stupid little wannabe gang in Laporte, and they were called the Laporte Posse, and they were picking on my brother. And we were in we were in school together, and everybody kept telling me like, "Hey, you should go. Somebody's picking on your brother." And I'm like, "He's fine. He can defend himself." Now, I guess I should say here, my brother had like hair so red it was orange, and he'd had glasses since he was 6, but my parents couldn't afford to replace the glasses, so it was like taped in the middle. So, I mean, we definitely were not like some, rich kids or anything. So I could understand why he got made fun of. But finally, this one guy came up and was like, "You really have got to go do something." So I went over and I was in a skirt, and there was this thing called the Nature Center, which is where it was just like trees and this little creek that ran through it and this little bridge. And anyway, he was picking on my brother, and all these people were around him. And my brother, he didn't want to fight because he didn't want to get in trouble. He didn't know what was going to happen. Um, and so, I just kind of smacked my brother out of the way, and I got right in his face and I'm like, "Look, if you want to fight, you're going to fight somebody your own size. Like, don't pick on the younger kid. Okay? So, if you want to get your butt kicked by a girl in a skirt, let's go. I'm not afraid. Otherwise, back off and leave my brother alone." So he left my brother alone until the end of the day, and we were walking home, and he called me. We were leaving, and like because we walked home, and I was walking with my brother to make sure that he was going to get home safe. And he goes, "Hey, you nasty little B word." And I turned around and I was like, "Oh, okay, we're going to do this now. We're going to do this now. Okay. All right, fine." And I was like half terrified and half like ready to just throat punch this kid. So I looked around and there was this big rock, and I picked it up and I was just kind of like tossing it up and down and like catching it. And I'm like, "Whenever you're ready, dude, let's go." And my brother like lit out. He ran off. Come to find out, he ran all the way home, burst into the house, is like, "Christy's gonna fight Wade. It's a whole thing." My mom's like freaking out because she thinks that I'm gonna get in a fight. And she is like not worried that I was gonna get in a fight, but that I was in a dress. Like that, my mom was not worried that I was gonna fight, just that I was in a dress. So nothing ended up happening because I was like, "Whenever you're ready." And nothing happened. And when I was around, they didn't pick on my brother anymore. So that's like our dynamic was like, "I'm going to defend you and kind of rate, like, but I was too like, "Don't smack your food, sit up straight." "Give me your dirty clothes so I can wash them." So it's kind of this like, I don't know, motherly defender kind of relationship, but it's really good. When my dad got sick, we got really close. We don't talk every day, but my brother is that guy that's like, "You're always welcome. If you need anything, call me." Like I could just show up at his house and he would be like, "Awesome, what's going on?" So we have a good relationship. It was tricky at first, but really good. But he was a snitch. He's not now, but he was a snitch when he was young.
That's funny. A lot of that reminds me of the dynamic with my brother, with my little brother. He's 1 year younger than me,
Oh,
and
okay.
he got picked on a lot in school. And of course, as a big sister, I would pick on him or different things. But if anybody else tried to mess with my brother, like I remember chasing some neighborhood boys around with they were riding a bike. I was walking. I had a baseball bat because they were picking on my brother so badly, and they were terrified. They were just riding their bikes as fast as they could, and it kind of helped, but at the same time they're making fun of him because what, you got to get your sister to fight your battles,
Oh, right.
so, but
Exactly.
they thought twice before they'd go too far, so I think it did help, but so
Well,
that's interesting.
boy wants to admit he got beat up by a girl, right?
Right.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, there's just another level of that. I think, like, really, you're gonna pick on my brother? Okay, okay, that's cute. Let's see where this goes.
Right. And I think you and I are about the same height. So we've got like this small but mighty personality. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, I think people think twice when they see this look in somebody's eyes who's like only like, like basically
Right,
child height. Yeah,
right.
they're like, better not mess with that one. That's
Maybe next
that's
level crazy.
yeah, yeah, that's fun. So you say that church and spirituality
Mhm.
was, or not spirituality, but religion was a big, cornerstone in your household.
Yeah.
So as a child growing up, what did you think about your religion or your family's beliefs, or like, how did you view all of that?
I just kind of I'm what you would call a cradle Baptist. So I was born on a Thursday, I was in church on a Sunday, and I didn't leave for a very long time. And I just took it all in. I knew I do really good when I'm told what to do. Like, believe it or I mean, there is a huge rebellious side of me, but I do really well when I know it's expected, and it gave me a lot of structure that I think I personally needed that my family, like my mom and dad weren't giving me. There was like structure there, and I liked that. And I never really questioned any of it because I just never knew any different. Like, we were never allowed to go to church with someone else. Like, if one of our friends invited us to go to church, we were absolutely not allowed.
Mm.
Because my dad's like, it will confuse you. There's so many different religions. Like, they can come with us, but you cannot go with them. So I never even really, I guess, kind of knew or understood what the different religions even were. And I just really believed it. Like, I got saved when I was 6. I was baptized. I mean, like, it was everything. I was convinced there was one point where I wanted to be a preacher's wife. Everybody that knew me was like, "Yeah, that's not find a different goal." Something else in life to be. You are not that. And with good point. I am not a preacher's wife. I would not be a good one. But it wasn't until I got older and actually got pregnant with my daughter. I got pregnant with my eldest when I was 19 and had her when I was 20. And that's kind of the point when I kind of really started to see some things. I got I got blamed at one church that I was at by the preacher because I was distracting to the young men in service, and I just had on it was a, like, ankle length dress, and it had buttons at the front, and the sleeves came to, like, right here, like, it wasn't slinky, it was completely appropriate, like, anyone would've my dad had no problem with me wearing it. And that was kind of the first time I was like, "Wait, what? Hold on, what?" And then, when I got pregnant with, my daughter, they wanted me to go up in front of the church and apologize and, like, confess my sins in front of the church and everything. My dad's like, "No, absolutely not." And my dad never went back to church after that. That was the point where my dad stopped going to church. And, I continued to go to church for a little while after that because of my daughter, because I had really good friends that I had made in church. It gave me a sense of right and wrong, and, I was really kind of afraid to do anything too messed up because I didn't wanna let my dad down, and I didn't wanna let my church down, and so I it really was I didn't question until I got older, and even then, I was like, "Well, that's just how it is. That's how God wanted it. Men do this, and women do this," and I didn't it wasn't until much later, and then when that questioning came, it really upended a lot, but I just took it all. Like, I thought that that was it and that was best, and my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody knew what was good for me, and that's what was good for me, and I wasn't gonna really question a lot. I think had I stayed in Kansas, I don't know, I mean, maybe I would have grown into being a preacher's wife, but probably not.
Yeah. So how old were you when you really started questioning things? Like I know like a little you were having these experiences,
Mhm.
a little thing, but not enough to shake your beliefs. So
Yeah.
do you remember the point that you really started examining your beliefs and really
Oh,
like questioning them deeply?
yeah, so, it was after I was married to Michael, so it was about 9 years ago,
Mhm.
and I it's such a weird story, I up until this point was still, like, reading my Bible every day and doing devotions and praying for Michael and, all of the things, and, but I love Nirvana, and, so we were in Seattle, and I wanted to go to Aberdeen, which is the hometown of Kurt Cobain. It's a mecca, and if you love Nirvana, there's just certain places you go. So I begged Michael to take me to Aberdeen. And we left and I was fine. I mean, I had on my flannel and my red lips and my stocking hat and my long hair and I was like ready to go and we were listening to Nirvana to get in the mood. And, Aberdeen is on the Olympic Peninsula, and so it is in like, it's one of the most rainy cities in Washington State, so as we were leaving Seattle, like, we were just driving into the rain, and the energy just kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, and I didn't really know what it was because I didn't even really understand what energy was. I just knew I was feeling heavy. And then we got to Aberdeen, and there's this huge sign outside of Aberdeen, and it said, Aberdeen, come as you are. Because of course, Nirvana's biggest song, right? So we I tell Michael, I'm like, you've got to get a picture of me in front of the sign. And he took some pictures and we drove off and I was looking at the pictures and like I didn't like the pictures. And I started screaming at him, like yelling, screaming. And I was just like, what's going on,
Mhm.
And so we found where Kurt Cobain's childhood home was, and I refused to get out of the car. Now, mind you, we just drove 4.5 hours one way to go to this place. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm not getting out of here. I'm not getting out of this car. You're crazy. And I'm like yelling at him and yelling at him in a way I never had yelled at him before. And so he gets frustrated and he's like, you wanted to do this. Like, we drove all this way and now you're refusing to get out of the car. Like, what is wrong with you? And so there's a song that Nirvana did and it's called Something in the Way. And if you listen to the Robert Patterson Batman, if you've watched that, you've heard that song because they play that song on there. But it was written about a time when he supposedly lived under this bridge. And so this bridge was just right down from it was in a park and it was just right down from this house. So Michael's like, "We're gonna go to this bridge." And I'm like, "Fine, F you, whatever." I'm like bad attitude. Bad, bad, bad attitude. And this was on his one day off. You guys, he was working like I'm throwing this major just tantrum and on his one day off. So we get to the park and I get out and I step onto the grass and it is like a heavy weighted blanket dropped on me from like 2 stories. I mean, I just was like, and everything felt different. Everything. Like I was feeling things that I had never felt before, like emotions and feelings, and like there was this heaviness, and I had no idea what was happening. And I am a photographer, and so I take lots of pictures, like hundreds of pictures. And that day I took 3. I took 3 pictures. That's how deeply this affected me. And I was walking around and I was confused and I didn't know what was going on. And I had never felt this way before. And I was just even more sad and angry than I was the first time. And at the time, we had our dog Snickers, and Michael and Snickers had walked this little path under this bridge. And I guess there was all of this like urban art under there. And Michael's like, "Come here, you got to get pictures of this." And so I'm walking over toward him, and there was like, so there's the Wenatchee River right here. There's this tiny little dirt path. There's this embankment, and then the bridge. And right there where the embankment and the bridge met, like right here in this tiny little space, there was this woman, only she was not a woman. I mean, she was a woman, but when I looked at her, I was like, that is not okay. Like that is not a person. I don't know what that is, but that's not a person. And it's like I hit a brick wall. It's like I just walked right into a brick wall. I could not move. I could not do anything. I couldn't speak. She was looking at me. I was looking at her. Her eyes were just like black. Like I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't good. And I'm like, We're leaving right now. We're leaving." The closer we got back to Seattle, the more I started kind of acting like a decent human being. For the next like 4 days, I couldn't get out of bed. Like I was so depressed, I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. I had no idea what was going on. So I called 2 of my friends that I knew could help me, Kira and Eva. And both are still in my life. Both are amazing people. I've talked about them on the channel. Um, and they're just like, you need to go get some sage. You need to cleanse yourself. Like, I don't know what happened, but you need to do some help. Kira became my mentor, which is amazing because now, we're soul sisters. But she told me, she's like, "Look, I'm not going to tell you the answers to this, but you're going to have to sort this out because now you're kind of seeing things that aren't lining up with these religious views. And you're going to have to start thinking about, what is this? What do you believe it was? Was it a ghost? Was it a spirit? Was it energy? Was it empathy? Was it channeling? Like, what was it?" And my whole life, I had always been given the answers when it came to religious things. Like, go to Matthew 2:15, here's the answer. Like I don't even know what that scripture is. So if it's some weird thing, I apologize. But I had always been told like you could find every answer you needed in a book, right? In a book. And there was no book. There was no book. There was no it was the first time I'd ever been told to figure out my own spirituality, and she wasn't doing it in a way of like figure it out.
Yeah,
She's like, "You have to figure this out. Like I
that's the
don't know what this
process.
is gonna look like for you." And she knew me, she knew my family, she knew my brother. Like we had been friends for years before this
Mhm.
happened. So she knew exactly how I grew up, exactly what my brother would say. Like, I mean, she knew it all. And she said, "The only thing that I can tell you is to just start following the bread trails and the rabbit crumbs and looking, or I guess I got that backwards, the rabbit trails and the breadcrumbs, and prove this stuff to yourself." And some of it came really easy and some of it was really hard. When I finally found like I call it a witchy store, a hippie store. When I found a metaphysical store to go into, I was terrified to walk into it. I thought for sure like Satan was going to show up and drag me to the pits of hell. I mean, I was terrified. And this lady, she was so nice. She's like, "You look like you have never been in a store like this." And I must have had a total deer in the headlights look. And she's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, look, I don't know what's going on. And I told her the whole thing. I told her what Eva and Kira had told me to do. And she kind of joked and she was like, welcome to the path. Let me help you. And she gave me some crystals and she gave me some sage and some instruction. And after that, it was a lot of really freaky things that happened. Um, and a lot of really questioning.
Hmm.
Um, is this witchcraft? Is this not witchcraft? Is this okay? Am I going to hell? Like it got pretty intense, and but after I staged my room, I was able to get out of bed. So that was good. But
Yeah.
I mean, that was the start of it, and it was scary because it was like everything that I had been told, everything that I had blindly believed, everything that anybody had ever told me from a pulpit or any scripture that I'd ever read, it's like it just got ripped up and thrown to the wind. And it was
Hmm.
very hard for me because like I said, there was always a book there. There was always somebody to hand me a book, like if you uh go to church if you're in religion and you're watching this right now, like I'm not bagging on you, that's amazing, great. But the second you walk into a church, they hand you a Bible and a casserole dish. They're like, welcome to the Baptist life, here you go, here's a cookbook, here's the Bible, here's a casserole, learn to make something, they'll see you on Sunday. There was nothing like that. And having to figure that out completely on my own. I mean, and don't get me wrong, Kira was there and she's like, well, and she guided me and helped me, but it really was the first time I was figuring out my faith on my own.
Hmm. Yeah. So did you know about Kira's beliefs prior to
Mhm.
this? Did you know that she was aware of other things and into other things other than religion?
Yeah, and that's how I knew to call her and Eva. So
So
Kira
what,
had told.
sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Well, I just real quick, I wanted to know, like, what did you think about that before you, approached her about this? Like, did you guys talk about it? What were your thoughts about her and about her
Yeah.
beliefs?
So we worked together at a farm and ranch store, and she told me that she could see auras. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what's an aura? What does that mean? I don't understand that. Is that in the Bible? Like what? And so we talked about it, and I was always very accepting because I knew that people believed different than I did. And I also knew that um, like not to be really brash and like, oh my god, you're going to hell, like, because that didn't get you anywhere if you wanted to witness to somebody. And for those of you that might not know what that means, to talk to somebody about Jesus, like you had to kind of be nice, right?
Hmm.
So I knew this, and I was really interested. I'm like, what's an aura? What do you mean? I don't understand this. And she told me about this much of what she did and believed, just enough to answer my questions and to know that, like, hey, don't ask me to church because I'm not going to come with you, kind of thing. And I
Hmm.
respected that, but enough to also respect where I was at the time and my family and their beliefs. And, so I was open to it. I mean, well, not open, that's not a true statement. I was aware of it, and I was
And
like, "Okay,
accepting,
this is
maybe.
just yeah, yeah, this is what it is." And, so when I called her and I was like, I need your help because
Hmm.
there's some stuff that went down and like I have no idea. And this is nothing I have ever read about anywhere. I don't know what it was." And she was so kind because she's like, okay, let's talk about this. And she was amazing. And she would have still been my friend if I would have been like, you know what? Mental moment. I'm sticking with the Bible. She would still be my friend to this day. Like that's just the kind of person that she is. But I knew that she would be the person to help me and that she would be able to guide me. And so I went right there.
Hmm. And so as you explored the path, um,
Mhm.
what ways what ways did she support you? And, was there anybody else that came into your life that supported you at that time?
So this is I'm gonna tell y'all something that I don't think I've ever shared before. Michael used to practice magic when he lived in Germany. So Michael is very familiar with the spiritual path and all of that. He used to do it over there. And then there was a series of events that happened in his life, and he just walked away from it all. And he's just like now he's very close to atheist, I would say. Like, he is on that very fine border of agnostic and atheist, and I think
Mhm.
maybe has, like, 1 foot over. Um, he was super supportive of me. He was like and he kept telling me the whole time, I was, like, trying to get him go to church and save his soul and everything. He's like, "Christy, there is so much more out there. You are like, it's you're so narrow-minded." And I was like, "That's what you would say, I want you in heaven with me." And again, I'm not making light to anybody who is religious. That's amazing. But when this happened, he was like, "Okay, well, whatever you need." And uh and then Kira was there, and she supported me by when so we were in Washington State, she was in Colorado. When we were back in Colorado, which I think was it after that job? Trying to remember. Uh, No, because after that job we went to Oregon. So it was after we were in Oregon. So I would say about 6 months later, we came back through Colorado because my next job was in or not my next job, his next job was in Casper, Wyoming. So when we came back to Colorado, she took me to a store um there in Fort Collins that's amazing. If you're in the Fort Collins area, go check out Northern Lights metaphysical shop. They're amazing. She bought me some crystals. She let me pick out a deck of cards. She let me pick out a book. She's like, whatever you want, like, I want to buy you some stuff to support you spiritually. And it was amazing. So I picked out the book Personal Power Through Awareness because I had no idea what energy was or what was going on. So I picked out that book. I picked out some crystals, and I picked out a fairy oracle deck because my dad really liked fairies. He actually had some on his saddle. He had, like, told him into the pattern of his saddle, and so I thought that that kinda represented my dad. I felt safe with that,
Mhm.
and then when I wanted my first tarot deck, I called her and I said, "Will you go pick up this fairy tarot deck for me?" And she mailed it to me, and I actually still have the card that she sent with that, like, "I love you so much, continue exploring your path." I still have that all these years later. It's in one of my journals. Um, but yeah, she was there. Any question that I had, even to this day, if something comes up, because she is into like Lakota teachings like I am, but she's also into tarot and things like that. So if anything ever comes up that I'm not really sure, she's the person I'm on the phone with. I'm like, I just did this shamanic journey and I don't understand this. She's still there. She calls me. Um, so those are the two most supportive people. Um, Michael has just anything I've asked him to get or buy or bring home, he's never questioned. He's just like, okay. I think the only thing he ever told me once was I was doing something. Uh, and he's like, I would be careful with that. And that
Mhm.
was about the only thing he said, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Um, but yeah, so two people that I'm really thankful for that are very close to me, but those were the 2 that supported me the most.
Yeah. So after, how long did it take of this exploration to kind of figure out what was that thing that you encountered, in Aberdeen? Like, what, did you ever sort it out and figure it out?
I did, yeah. So, there's a lot of, in places like that, because okay, so I didn't know this, but Kurt Cobain's ashes were spread along that river right there. And, so and that bridge for me is a portal that I go through when I work or I do things. Um, I use that bridge sometimes as a portal. So that was a very significant spiritual thing to me. So what was there was just a very dark, unhealthy energy.
Hmm.
Um, and um, so not of this world, very I would say almost a black energy
Hmm.
that was there. I, and so I don't want to put a specific label to it,
Right.
but it was very dark and very unhealthy. And I think it was there just waiting for someone to prey on. And I think it
Okay.
knew what I was inside, even though I didn't know, it recognized. My spirit guides, we always say that you have to invite your spirit guides in, but they are there to protect you. And I think my spirit guides were like, nope, you are not ready for this yet. And
Hmm.
I think that's why I literally like hit that wall and I couldn't move. But yeah, it was a pretty dark, unhealthy energy that was there. And
Yeah.
I figured that out. When I started, um, I say remembering because I feel
Hmm.
like I've done a lot of this before in previous lifetimes. So when I started remembering these things, it all came kind of quickly and it was just a matter of piecing things together. I had a really difficult time with the darker, heavier energies. I always just kind of thought that they were like relegated to the pits of hell and they weren't actually here walking around among us. And so I think the most difficult thing for me to learn was that know that there is unhealthy energies here,
Hmm.
and certain things um bring those unhealthy energies, certain places, certain practices and things. Um, but yeah, I figured out pretty quick what she was. Um, what was harder for me was figuring out God and Jesus and how that fit into my new belief. That
Hmm.
was the harder thing for me. All of this other stuff, it was kind of like a domino effect. Once it started rolling, I was like, oh, got it, got it, got it, got it, and I love to read. So I just turned into a sponge and I like devoured everything I could. Any book, any YouTube video, any person I could talk to, anything, I asked a million questions. Um, so
So how long after from that experience and you seeking Kira for help and having Michael's support, how long of exploration did it take for you to realize that you didn't feel aligned with religion anymore?
I would say it was probably about a year.
Hmm.
It was really a year of untangling it. And when I first started looking into it, um, I was looking at it in a very dualistic way of like this is right and this is wrong. And really what I had to do was retrain my brain as to it's not that it's right or wrong, it's healthy or unhealthy, it's aligned, like you said. It's what is the point of it? Like that was the question that I was always asking. Like, what is the point of religion? What does it do? Like, okay, I know it says this and this, but what else does it do? What does spirituality do? And when I started really looking at how stark those beliefs were. Like, this is a set of rules, and you do this, and like I said, you get handed a book, and then um, the hardest thing for me was people would be like, "Well, if it resonates with you, keep it. If it doesn't, let it go. There's no right or wrong answer." And I'm like, "But there is." So I think once I learned in my mind to get out of my dualistic mind, it it went a lot faster. But I would say
Mhm.
a year of me really, and it wasn't even um does it feel aligned or not? It was like, am I going to hell for this? Like,
Mhm.
is that what's happening here? Like, should I even be questioning this? So it was more just giving myself permission to question it,
Mhm.
really, is I think kind of the underlying and then once I realized, you know what? Satan hasn't shown up yet. You're still here. I mean, your whole world hasn't fallen apart. So, yeah, go ahead and question it. Then I really started, you know, really
Digging
questioning.
deeper, digging
Yeah.
deeper, trying to
Yeah.
find answers, trying to find what fit. Did you go to church at all during that time?
Nope.
No,
Nope. I hadn't
you
been to
couldn't?
church.
Or
No, I mean, I hadn't been the last time I was in church, I went to church, we were in Rio Vista, California, and that had been several years ago. When you travel around like we do, it was hard to find a church because you'd find a church and then you'd meet people and you'd make friends and then you're gone.
yeah.
Um, but no, I didn't uh once that experience happened, I didn't pick up my Bible again. Um, Actually, I think my mom probably still has my Bible that I had for, oh my goodness, years. I got it for Christmas, had my name embossed on
Mhm.
the bottom of it, and has a million notes in the pages. It was a study Bible, wore out. I mean, it was wore out. But
Yeah.
no, I didn't go back. Um, I think at this point, my mom, it's really important to my mom. She goes to church. My brother and sister-in-law don't really, but if they started, like if my family invited me, I would go, just because
Mhm.
it's family. But I don't, yeah, I never went back. I never
Mhm.
asked. I knew the answers. I knew what I was going to get told. And
Yeah.
so, for me, it was kind of like, um, I don't need to go back to be told what I already know I'm going to be told, you know? Um, and I was afraid too that if I went into church and I said this is what happened, they would be like, "You're crazy."
Mhm.
You know, that's not what happened. The devil got a hold of you, which was not the case.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, you had a valid experience, a real experience, and you had a witness.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, even though, like, you didn't mention, I guess Michael couldn't see the entity that you encountered, or did he? Did he sense anything?
He just kind of looked at me weird because I mean, I literally, oh, and I want to tell you this too. I literally just stopped. And like
Mhm.
us short people, we have to walk kind of fast, right? We're like fast walkers, like our little feet like
Yeah.
and I just was like "Poof." And I did ask my brother um though something, and this was interesting. So, I was in Saratoga. My brother was working on a ranch up there. This was before they moved to Torrington. And I didn't tell him everything, but I was like, I had this experience in Aberdeen and I don't know what to think of it. And so I told him, and he goes, well, yeah, that was probably really real and valid. And I'm like, okay, but what do you think about this? Because my brother is the for school, the kids, the boys have to read books, So my brother has the Bible is one of the books that they read that counts towards, like, you have to read 5 books or whatever. So that counts. He makes them read that. So I knew that he would have a very different opinion. And so I told him, I said, "This is what happened in Aberdeen. What do you think?" And he goes, "Well, I believe you," which you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was like, "Holy shit, what?" And he goes, "You can be frozen with fear." And he's like, "And I do believe that there are, um, demons that are on this earth. And I don't doubt that you've seen one."
Hmm.
And he said, "And I know that you always loved Nirvana and you always loved Kurt Cobain. And I don't doubt that you had that experience there." And he goes, "But I think it was just an experience. I don't think it was anything that big of a deal." But my brother validated it for me.
Hmm.
And it's like, and that's really kind of all I needed, you know? And I was like, "Well, what about dreams and intuition?" And he goes, "Well, it even says in the Bible that in the end days your daughters will dream dreams and your sons will prophesy." And he's like, "So if you're having dreams, I mean, yeah, why would you not?" You know?
Hmm.
And then he also said to me, he goes, "Gifts are from God and from Jesus. And we don't know what these gifts are." And, and he even said, I guess there's a story where somebody, oh God, okay, I might get this wrong. Don't quote me on it. It was in the Old Testament where a priestess brought back or like channeled like Ezekiel's soul or something like that. Anyway, the Lord let him kind of go back, and like Ezekiel or Elijah or whoever it was like really mad that this had been done. And he's like, "This is why it tells you not to do that." Now, I don't believe that, but he validated for me what I was asking without him knowing what he did. So once I kind of got that, I was like, okay. And I think my sister-in-law figured it out a lot faster than my brother did. I think by now everybody knows that I've kind of left the church and I'm a little more witchy. Nobody really talks about it because if we don't address it, then you don't have to say, "I don't want you around my family," you know? So I think it's one of those things that we just kind of quietly acknowledge in each other. You believe one thing, I believe something different, but we're not going to talk religion.
Hmm.
And we're good. And I'm okay with that, because I want to be able to be around my brother and my amazing sister-in-law and my nephews. And of course, I'm not, doing anything telling them anything, I
Right.
respect where they're at. But so I think my sister-in-law though, I think she kind of figured it out. And so, which is funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, as so you've had about 9 years
Mhm.
of this journey of finding things, of finding this new path and exploring and, like you said, absorbing things.
Right.
What are some of the favorite things that you found, or the most shocking things that you found in your studies that excite you and, empower you or like fuel
So
you?
one of the most shocking things, this is another one of my favorite stories. Um, I didn't understand how energy worked. I didn't understand, like, I didn't understand it. So I was trying to understand energy, and I invited my spirit guides in, and I was like, "Look, just give me some sort of a sign that you're here, that I'm not crazy." I'll never forget it. This was in Casper, Wyoming at the Ramcota Hotel. We were on like the second floor, I think, like back toward the back, because again, we had our dogs, so we had to have a pet friendly room. So we were back. And so to get to the main elevators, you had to go down this hallway here, and then a long hallway here, and then over this way. And the main elevators were here. There was another little elevator here, but it didn't work. And everybody in housekeeping and everything said that doesn't work. It's kind of hit or miss. Don't try it. Like if you go down it, we can't promise you won't get stuck or whatever. So the very next day after I like called in my spirit guides and like, had um like an idea of what this spirit guide looked like, because I really meditated, and I'm like, I want to know, like, what do you look like, and all of this. So I did all of this, and the next day I woke up and I had to go down to the main lobby to get breakfast. So I walk by this elevator and the light goes on and it dings and the doors open. And all of the housekeeping people kind of look at each other and I'm like, huh, isn't that cool? So I go down, I eat, I come back, same thing. Elevator dings, door opens. I'm like, okay, that's a thing. All right. The rest of the time we stayed there, and we were there for 6 months. Every single time I walked past that elevator, it would ding and it would open. And it got to the
Without pressing
point
a button?
without pressing a button. I didn't do anything. It just would go ding. And so there was one time that there was a family that was waiting to, they were waiting to go uh, to the swimming pool, and they walked up and they were kind of standing there, and I was walking toward him. I said, "Hey, hold on." I said, "That's gonna open here in about 30 seconds, and you can hop on it and go down, but it's not gonna let you come back up." I'm like, I don't know, it's just weird. And I go, "But you're gonna have to use the other thing, the main elevator." And I walk by, it dings, it opens. The housekeeping people would wait for me to walk by, and if they seen me coming down the hallway, they would like line up so that they could use that elevator to go down to the next floor. So that was really weird. Just learning your energy, learning, like, some people's energies are very electric, and
Mhm.
learning the different types of energy that people have. Now, I can't control electricity, all right, but it was just one of those things that my spirit guides were like, "Oh, you're having fun with this? Okay, let's keep it going." So I think that one was really pretty cool. And then I think the other things that just make me really passionate is a lot of the Lakota teachings, the ancient star knowledge, the medicine wheel, the creation story, the understanding of seeing more than one or two directions, like of not being dualistic, and just nature, just nature in general gets me excited. Being able to go out and to be in this and to use the elements. Um, I think that's it. Right now, I'm really excited around learning neuroscience and how that can, you know, be integrated with spirituality. So it kind of changes, but it's mostly it's just that really basic stuff, like just being in nature, using the elements, using the stars and the moon, and understanding energy. Like that's
Mhm.
what really kind of gets me excited.
Yeah. So, one of the things, since we're friends, one of the things that I
Yeah.
know about you that is like so central to who you are is you're a healer. And you are really big on helping people. And I see you as just this really strong force. You've really showed up for me in times when I was confused and I really needed help and guidance. But how did you get from, the, church Christie,
Uh-huh.
religious Christie, to this healer Christie? What kind of work did you do to get to that point? Because as healers, we have to do our own healing to really step into
Yeah.
that role. So what did that look like for
Yeah.
you?
So, well, first of all, thank you. That's such a beautiful compliment. Thank you for that. Hold on, I'm sitting sideways on my couch here. Gotta readjust. Um, you know, I was, I was in Kenai, Alaska. I'm all over the place with this healing journey of mine. I was in Kenai, Alaska, um, when I think I really had the highest consciousness, like, understanding of what I was. I was sitting next to the Kenai River, um, which looks like melted turquoise as it flows. It is just so beautiful. And I just knew I was a teacher, and I was like, but that's so basic. I don't want to just be a teacher, I everybody wants to be like this big important, like
Guru or
high
something.
yeah, 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 like high priestess of blah 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 blah
Hmm.
blah. And I actually fought it for a while. I was like, nah, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. That is not who I am. I am not a teacher. I am more than a teacher. Like my ego was in the way. And and then finally, I think it was Eva that was like, you taught me so much. You're a good teacher. And I was
Hmm.
just like, uh and so then I really started looking at, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a holy woman? Or so Native Americans don't use the term shaman. That's like an Andes term. But what does it mean to be a holy woman? What does it mean to be a medicine woman? Are those things different? Are they the same? What are they? And so I started looking to just understand what those even meant. Like, and
Hmm.
there is a difference. A holy, and they can be men or women, but a holy woman is much more of what we would equate to as a shaman. They go on the vision quests with the men, and they manage the energy and do a lot of the healing and do a lot of what I do. And the medicine man or woman just works with herbs. And it's a very beautiful practice, but I'm not called to working with herbs. So I was like, okay, well, that's not it.
Hmm.
Um, and the more that I learned about it, the more that I was just like, okay, yeah, this is kind of what it is. This is what I am. And then with my YouTube channel, um, I really didn't know what to do other than to teach, because I was talking to a lot of people who weren't where I was spiritually. So I had to explain what I was doing and kind of like catch them up, so that, when I talked about doing a tarot reading, people knew what it was and they weren't afraid of it, or, whatever. And it just came so naturally that I was like, "Oh, okay, well, here we are." And it was kind of one of those things that I didn't embrace at first. I mean, I really fought it, because I was like, this isn't what I'm meant to be. And
Hmm.
then just the more that I learned about it, the more that I was like, "Oh, I'm already doing some of that. Like, how did I know to do that?
Hmm.
What is this?" And at some point I just set labels aside, and I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna quit labeling myself, because I don't even know what to call me. And I'm just gonna start doing what I do. And then I go back through my journals, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's quite a." I'm a fighter. At my heart, I'm a fighter, and so I kind of fight it, like I fight the change. I'm like, "No, I don't want to be a teacher." Even though I knew all the way back, you know, almost 6 years ago now, in 2020, I knew that I was a teacher.
Hmm.
um I just didn't know the depth of it, because at that time, to me, teacher was very surface level. It was like, this is this crystal and this is what this means. I didn't really think of the deeper meaning of it. um
Right, right. And like my view of, a teacher, it's more like a guide, and
Mhm.
that's like I too, we have so much in common. I too love, and I've always felt like I literally wanted to be a school teacher when I was growing up. When I was like 17, pregnant with my son, like I was like, I'm going to be a school teacher because then I can have the same schedule as my kids and I can be home every night with them and have summers off with
Right,
them or whatever. And, that didn't work out for me because I ended up getting in trouble and, I blew that. But honestly, at this point in my life, I'm
right,
glad. I'm glad
right,
because,
right.
but, yeah, a teacher, it feels like a big role, but a guide, like you can guide anybody, you can guide, you just have to have a little bit of knowledge. And honestly, you don't even have to have the knowledge. If they're seeking and they cross your path, you can find things out for other people, or you can guide them
Oh,
to the
yeah.
truth.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, that's really cool. So,
Yeah.
what are, let's talk about a little bit about your own personal healing journey. Um, we haven't really talked about like your trauma or, anything like traumatic that you've experienced, but you and I both know that you have had some pretty serious trauma. So once
Yeah.
you came to this point where you're learning these new spiritual concepts and learning about the Lakota and about witchcraft and crystals and different things, how did you take these things that you were learning and apply them to your own healing?
So I think that's what's been really interesting is, I always joke, and especially with Karina, that I just kind of like stumble into stuff, right? It's not like there's some deep conscious thing in my mind where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I just kind of like stumble into it. And then I'm like, oh well, bloody hell, here we are. Um, for me, what has helped? So some of the trauma that do you want me to share what some of that trauma is so
Sure.
people
Yeah.
know? Um, so I my mom is a narcissist. So I was raised by
Mhm.
a narcissistic mom, which if you are the daughter of a narcissist, that's really difficult. There's a lot of emotional abandonment that goes along there. I've got some pretty deep abandonment issues. I struggled with disordered eating from the time I was 12 years old, which to put that into terms of what grade, that was fourth grade, guys, fourth grade.
Mhm.
I started starving myself up until I was into my mid 30s. I've got really bad body dysmorphia. I mean, it is debilitating sometimes. Like that's why I hopped off of my channel was because it was very hard for me to look at myself.
Mhm.
Honestly, it was very hard to go outside. It was very hard to be seen. Um, and it's it's so much more than just like I look fat in this dress. Like it's not just that. It just sends you down this place that it takes a long time to crawl out of.
Mhm.
Um, I married a narcissist because part of what happens is these unhealed wounds that we have, you know, um, our brains, we think, well, if my mom was a narcissist and she didn't love me and I marry a narcissist and I can get them to love me, then it's okay, I'm lovable. And everybody does that, not with a narcissist, but in various ways, it's wired into our brains.
Subconsciously, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's wired into our brains. Like, okay, well, this person didn't love me, but if I can get this person to love me, and that's why a lot of times they'll say, like, you marry your mom or you marry your dad, like
Yeah.
you're marrying the unhealed part of that. So I basically like married well, he was worse than my mom, but I basically like married my mom.
Mhm.
And I suffered a lot of trauma there. I was misdiagnosed as bipolar for 5 years. I was on really heavy duty medications,
Mm.
heavy duty, like to the point that when the doctors looked at what I was taking, they're like, "How do you function?" And I'm like, "I
Mhm.
get up every day. What do you mean?" And they're like, "No, I mean like this is the levels we would have for somebody if we wanted them to just be institutionalized and not
Oh,
move."
wow.
And I was like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Um, and so there was a lot of that. There's a lot of like ancestral trauma that has come up through my dad's lineage of alcoholic men, abusive men. And, my dad was able to break that cycle. Um, and I'm the one that's here to heal it. So my dad broke it and I'm healing it. Um,
I
and
just got chills. Oh my God. I just got like chills all over my body with that. Sorry.
Yeah, it was that was quite a thing to realize. To I you know, I mean, obviously my dad's not here anymore. I can't ask him. So, I really started looking into like, what was it like to be a kid in the 50s, born in the 50s, whose dad was an alcoholic, whose my granny packed up and left my grandpa for a year. Like that did not happen in 1957. Like you just
Yeah.
didn't do that. She was gone for a whole year. And my grandpa called. This is how my family ended up in church, by the way. My grandpa called and told my granny, he said, you know what? The devil, Jesus, and I all had a battle for my soul, and Jesus won. And I told him that if he let me get through that and my soul didn't go somewhere else, he goes, I was coming to get you. We're going to church every time the doors are open. My grandpa didn't drink a drop. He was there all the time. For me to learn that my grandpa was the way he was, I was in my 40s before my granny ever even told me. Because she's like, I just didn't want this beautiful, image of your grandpa to be destroyed, but you need to know, where you came from. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of because again, it just ancestral trauma, it stays in our DNA and it gets passed down. And so we can have reactions to things that even we don't understand. Um, so that came up a lot. And what ended up uh, the most recent thing that I discovered, which this one was a big thing for me, my ex, I knew like had financially abused me and emotionally abused me and gaslit me and like I mean there was a bunch of stuff there. Um, but I'd always struggled around, issues with intimacy, and I really didn't understand like why. I was like, I'm broken. I must be one of those 2% of women that you read about that just is broken. And I had gone through this past year and a half has been such deep healing that I didn't even know, like traumas that I didn't even know were showing up. And I was listening to a guy on a podcast, and he was he was talking to this other guy who was talking about his wife, and he said, "Your wife is a sexual trauma survivor, but her story was my story." And I was like, "But I've never been essayed. I'd never been like none of that had ever happened. So how could this be my story when that didn't happen?" Well, I found out that um, coercive consent is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing,
Mm.
and that's you don't know. I mean, the thing was like I always was like, okay, this is gonna happen. So I can either just say yes and let it happen or I can fight this. And I didn't realize that I just stopped it before it got to the point of it being something else.
Mm.
I didn't realize that's what it was that had happened. And so when I heard that, I just broke down in tears and bawled and cried and shook um and so what's helped me, I think where I'm at in my path right now is, before it was the understanding myself, it was the forgiving myself. And now where I'm at is again back to the science part. It's the trauma. It's what is my body doing? Like my brain, what's my brain doing? What's my body doing? Why is this happening? Like, how come I feel this way? And I'm a person who needs to understand the feeling and the why, like what is it? And so when I can understand the what, then I can start to heal it. And so it's been a lot of looking into neuroscience and trauma therapy and I mean all kinds of psychology and then taking that and going, okay, so now I understand it in a biological, physiological sense. How do I take this and cross it over into my spiritual life and release this? And it's been pretty complex. And I want to say too, like sometimes you do this deep healing and you don't even realize that you're doing it. It's like you get this realization and then you go down the rabbit hole and you figure it out and then you're like, "Oh, okay, so So this is it. I work a lot with archetypes. That helps me to understand a lot. And I was actually sharing with Karina just yesterday. Healing is like a retrograde. You start off confused and soupy and not really sure what's going on. Nothing's lining up, and then you got to walk it all the way back. So you go backwards, and you walk it back to the root of what happened, to what the trauma really is. Through all of the crap. So that's the retrograde part of the planet, right? So you walk it back,
Mhm.
and then when you figure out what the root is, then you go forward in the healing, because you can't
Mhm.
start the healing right here, because this is the tip of the iceberg, and it's just showing you a small part of what all is underneath. And so it's been a combination of both.
Mhm.
Um did that answer your question at all? I feel like
Yeah,
I circled
yeah.
around a
So
very broad way.
no, you're good. So it sounds like really awareness was really key.
Yeah.
And, depending on what you were into at the time depended on how you dealt with whatever came up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are some of the tools that you used, your modalities that you used to help you overcome these traumas?
So every morning I do a spirit walk. That's what I call it. I just go walk in nature, and I take my shoes off and I ground. I clear all of my chakras out. I start at the top and I clear them all down. And then I take the energy from Mother Earth and I pull it all the way up through and around, and just put myself in this protected bubble. Um, I do a lot of candle magic for releasing a lot of, I really like fire. I'm like that little kid on that commercial that's like, somebody give me fire. I mean, that's me. I'm like, oh, fire. um I love to burn it up. I love to take the thing and just watch it burn. Like, there's some
Mhm.
sort of satisfaction in just watching it disintegrate. I journal a lot. And there's actually scientific proof around um, actually handwriting out and hand journaling. It rewires your brain. It causes different parts of your brain to work together and helps to do that. So journaling it, just getting it out of my body, crying. Um, I've been doing a lot of shamanic journeying myself, which is going into the upper world or the lower world to understand what's going on. Lower world does it. We're not talking hell. We're just talking like the ancestral level. And then the upper world would be like the celestial level. I've been doing a lot of that, but a lot of it is just very just communing with the earth, just grounding, um taking a lot of showers to just like rinse that energy off. Um and really kind of whatever resonates in the moment. Like, sometimes I'll take 3 or 4 walks a day. um Sometimes I just go outside and sit in the grass and
Mhm.
just don't move. But I think what I've discovered for me is that I've got to get it out of my body. So some way, whether it's crying or journaling, walking, um, I wouldn't really say that it's praying. I don't really call it praying, but like talking to the grandfathers, Father Sky, Mother Moon, Grandmother Earth, Pachamama, the ancestors. I talk to all of them. Um,
Mhm.
you know, so just getting it out
Yeah.
is is really important. However, running, stomping.
Yeah. Yeah, or even creating something you
Yeah.
can release through art or
Yes,
singing, writing songs. I know you like to write songs, and that really
yes,
helps you get it out, huh?
yeah, and junk journal. I'm glad you brought up the creative part, because I'm like thinking all deep, and now I actually started 3 more junk journals. So I've got junk journals that I've started, and even just decorating, anything creative is what really helps me heal. Talking. just talking to people. I mean, guys, you don't know this, but I leave Amber like lots of 10-minute messages of like, "Oh my God, you're not gonna believe." But even just sharing. But yeah, creativity is a big one. That one kind of comes in spurts. um, I found that when I'm kind of at the end of processing one specific thing, that I will get really creative. And so, then as I'm learning other things, the creativity is kind of paused a little bit while I'm learning, and then it'll be another spurt. So right now I'm kind of in that paused. Well, I guess it's paused in the sense of I'm not doing junk journaling, but I'm creating um content in other ways, or like outlines for content. So I guess I'm still creating, just kind
Yeah.
of look a little different.
It's low key right now, right?
Yeah.
It's just a little
Yes,
low
yes,
key.
absolutely.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I just have a few more questions before
Yeah,
we wrap it up, and I wanted to
alrighty.
kind of explore some comparisons on like your perspective from before versus now.
Okay.
So starting with God, like how has your view of God changed?
Oh, it's done a complete 180. Before I believed in God, you couldn't convince me otherwise. Like if you said God didn't exist, or you even called it universe, I would be like, it's God. Now I'm not so sure. And I don't mean that in like, I do believe in source. I do believe that there's a creative energy, a source. Um, but it's nothing like what I was always taught that, God was like the ultimate grandfather, like loving, supportive, but vengeful and wrathful, and all of this. And now I'm like, I think it's more just energy. I think it's creative energy. I think it's, because energy can't be created or destroyed. It just changes forms. And to me, that's a lot of what God is. It just changes forms. Um, and so, yeah, that's one that I'm still kind of like, how do I verbalize it? Because I think I see it more now as creative energy, as opposed to this grandfatherly, authoritative, guiding light. I just kind of see it as energy. And that
Okay.
was hard. That was hard. That was a hard one to get to.
Mhm. So how did you get did that happen in that first year when you were exploring everything? Did that change then, or was it something that evolved over time?
It evolved over time, and you were the one that kind of helped me get to that point. Believe it or not, the first time that we talked, you're like, I believe in Jesus and I believe in God, and I was asking you all these questions about Jesus. And it's because I didn't know. I knew I didn't believe in them the way that I was raised, but I didn't know what I believed. And so you actually helped me to get to that. And that's just been what, a couple of years ago. So it was just a couple of years ago that I kind of figured out. And even you and I have very different ideas on what God is, and that's totally cool and it's totally okay. But um, like, I didn't know what to do with God and Jesus. Like, they were the 2 that was like, "Okay, I've kind of figured all of this other stuff out. I don't know what to do with y'all. Like, I don't believe what I used to believe, but I don't know what to believe." So that was
Mhm.
the hardest one to untangle for me. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah. So what do you think about Jesus now with everything that you've learned? What do you think about him?
So, I think he's an ascended master, a
Mhm.
teacher. I don't worship him the way that I used to, and that's kind of what I struggled with. Was I'm supposed to, again, me following the rules, I'm supposed to worship this this person, and I didn't anymore. I couldn't, but I knew he existed. Like there's proof that he existed. So what was he? What was it? You know? Um, so I just see him as an ascended master and teacher. He's not somebody that I work with a lot.
Mhm.
I really kind of stepped away from the like working with Jesus and the angels and that kind of thing. It's not that I don't believe in them. I do absolutely believe in them. That's just not kind of where my energy aligns. And that was
Mhm.
another thing that was hard because I was like, oh, does this make me not as good or less than or bad in some way? Because I'm like, I do believe in it. And if somebody gives me an angel healing, I'm like, I'm all for it. I'm here. It's just not the energy that I work in. The energies that I work in are much different than that. And that took some getting used to too, because it's like, is this permissible? A lot of it has been just giving myself permission, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Mm. So, what do you think this is pretty deep, but what do you think the purpose of incarnating as a human being is? The purpose of life?
Oh, that is a good question, and it is deep. I like it. Um, I believe that we are here to learn our own lessons and to help other people learn their lessons. I believe very much in sacred contracts. So I believe that we come here to either learn something that we've not yet learned in the many times we've incarnated, or to heal past life karma, generational, ancestral karma, or to even fix the karma for ourselves. I really believe that right now I'm even fixing some past life karma from like several lifetimes ago that I've had. So I believe that, we're very much here for that, to learn and to heal and to renew. But I also believe that we incarnate to help others in our soul family. Like I really believe that you and I had a soul contract, and that, you're like, I want to learn to be this, and I'm like, great, I'll help you. It's kind of like they're taking volunteers. The angels are up there and they're like, okay, who wants to volunteer? And I'm like, okay, I will. That'd be awesome. And so then there's kind of this, okay, so when and where are you going to meet? How are you going to meet?
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, we're going to meet through Cynthia on the internet, and we're not actually going to meet in person just quite yet. And, so I believe that we're also here to help others. We're here to help teach them and guide them. I think sometimes we're a lesson for other people. I really think this life is about learning. I think it's a lot about learning and experiences, but I don't think it's all heavy. I think how cool is it, to get to be in this body, to have these experiences, to go these places that our luminous bodies or our souls can't go to. Our souls can't receive a hug. Our souls don't bear children. Our souls don't create children. Our souls don't know heartbreak. They don't know hurt. They don't know pain. They're just this very enlightened consciousness. And so I think it's really beautiful. So even though it can be a really messed up journey along the way, I really believe that everything is there's just a thread that runs through it all. Every person that you meet, everything. And we're here to have an experience as much as we are to learn and to heal and remember.
Yeah. So, one of the things that is really big in religion is judgment. And, like, there's when you die, it's going to be judgment day, and you're going to
Right.
see if your name is in the book of life and all of that.
Yeah.
Do you think that we get judged for our actions here?
I do. I think that judgment is twofold. I think that we get judged here. I don't believe that we get out of this life without paying for some of the messed up stuff that we've done. Like there are, and we call it consequences, right? So I do believe that we get judged while we're here and while we're alive. And I believe that uh, when we cross over, that our souls get time to rest and reflect and integrate. But I do think that, those bigger beings that are up there that are directing all of this incarnation, I think they sit down and they say, so, you said that you wanted to learn forgiveness. How'd that go for you down there? Did you learn it? You know? I think it's more of a discussion as a harsh, like, judgment, but I think that too, when we're up there, they say, "Okay, well, you missed this, and this, and if you would have done this, this is what it would have looked like. If you would have made this different decision, this is the way that your life would have gone." But I do think that we definitely, um, have a conversation, and I think that if we do some messed up stuff here, that we absolutely have to clean it up in another lifetime. I don't think it's the very next lifetime. I think, there's kind of lifetime, but I think it's a Buddhist, I think it's a Buddhist parable, but it's like this guy is walking next to an ascended master, and this guy thinks that he like knows everything, and he goes, well, I want to walk with you, and so we'll just say Jesus. And so he's walking next to Jesus, and Jesus is like, okay, but you you can't ask any questions, you have to just observe. So they walk past this mom and this baby, and they're starving and they're crying and they're in pain, and they just want money for food. And Jesus is like, nope, and just keeps on going. And the guy's like, clutch my pearls. Oh my God, and then, walks by this other person who, um, has some other issue. And so anyway, they end up walking past three people. I don't remember what all three of them are. I just remember the mom and the little boy, because this one really spoke out to me. And he goes, why did you not help them? Like, you're supposed to help people in need. And Jesus goes, yeah, but in a previous life, those people were people who tormented and tortured other people, who didn't feed other people, who didn't help other people when they were able to. So they're learning that in this lifetime. And if I would have helped them, they would not have learned that lesson. And that's kind of how I see that, as like very powerful. And then I also see too, and this is a little controversial, and not everybody might agree with me on this, and it's okay that you don't. For me, it would have to be a pretty hard assignment to sign up to treat somebody like absolute crap and to abuse them in unthinkable ways so that they could get to where they were, right? So when I look back at the things that my ex-husband did, right, all of that stuff, um, what a job to sign up for. To be that person, to be like, okay, well, if you want to forgive, if you want to learn forgiveness, Christy, that's great, but you have to have something to forgive. So who here among you wants to teach Christy that lesson? And someone's like, hey, you know what, I love you enough that I'm going to teach you that lesson, um but I'm not going to love you when I get there. So I think for me, being able to see people as lessons, seeing life in that way, I can kind of then go, you know what, glad it's over. Thank you for that. And I'm gonna go on my way and not have any hatred for them. Like, I have no hatred in my heart for him. I really hope that he finds somebody amazing, that he has an amazing life, that he gets to have an amazing experience. And that's kind of the tricky part of spirituality, because religion would be like, you are a bad person and you're going to hell, you know?
Right, right. And of course, some religious groups would put you as the bad person for
Yeah,
divorcing your husband, even
right,
though you were enduring much abuse. So,
right.
so yeah. Um, so, you know, I have the perspective of, we're in a planetary shift. The Earth
Mhm,
is changing. The
mhm,
Earth's vibration is changing. It's rising, and
mhm.
it feels like chaos right now. And I think, if I think that's why I can understand why people are like, it's the end of times. It's the end of a time, I believe. But
Right,
what,
right.
as we go through this evolution as a collective, as humanity, what do you see for the future of humanity? What do you see us growing into?
Well, as we're headed into the age of Aquarius, being an Aquarius myself, I think we're going to come into a lot of enlightenment. I think we're going to be able to set aside a lot of those emotions that can get in the way and hem us up and be able to see things with more clarity. Um, not that there's going to be void of emotion. I think we're just going to be able to look at it more in a clear way, and so I think that that's what's coming in is just a lot of clarity, a lot of what's the word? High ideals is what's coming to mind, but that's not what I'm meaning to say. A lot of just intellect. There's a lot of stuff going on with AI right now, and that like how does that look and how does that integrate, and I think it's a way. Aquarius is ultimately all about community. It's about how are we collectively. So I think we're going to start looking much more, whereas we're kind of coming from this energy of like it's all about me. I'm going to get mine. I need to be ahead. You're over here doing your thing. I'm over here doing mine. I think there's going to be a lot more of coming together as societies. I think we're seeing that now. Without getting too political or anything, we're just seeing those constructs really be looked at as far as like food stamps and air traffic controllers and government, and does this really work for us? Is this really where we want to be, or is it not? I think we see it in places like Memphis, where I'm at right now. We've got the National Guard here because, as a collective, this town has been like, we need help. And by the way,
Mhm.
they have found 101 missing children in Memphis just since the National Guard has been here. 101 missing kids have been found. Now, I don't know if they were like, I can only imagine. But there have been like 2,100 arrests and like guns off the street and violent gang criminals. And when I say guns off the street, I'm talking like black market illegal guns. I'm not talking about taking away your second amendment right. That's not what we're talking
Mhm.
about here. But things are getting cleaned up, and I think that's where we're headed, where we as a society are setting aside this emotion of I'm going to get mine and either you do or you don't, whatever, I don't care, to being more collective and whole. And I think just really looking at things as facts. What do we know to be true? Not what do we feel, not, what does the bottom line say or what does the spreadsheet say, but what do we know to be true? And I think what we're finding is we know to be true that a lot of things really need to change. And I think that's where it's very much headed. Um, so that's kind of where I see it going. I mean, I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, no, a lot of that really resonates with me. And honestly, I envision the same thing and I see the same
Yeah,
things in the world. So a lot of that was very confirming for me because you and I really haven't talked about this before.
right,
But
right.
yeah, I do see us moving into more communal,
Hmm.
going back to our roots of
Mhm.
communal living,
Yeah.
tribes, and having more connection with our neighbors, and
Yeah.
not just, like our household, but just opening up to like seeing the world, seeing other people not as so separate and so far from ourselves, but, seeing the God in everyone.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So what advice would you have, or what advice would you give to a newly spiritually awakened person, somebody waking up from religion or
Mhm.
atheism, or, whatever the circumstances is, they're on the path. What
Mhm.
advice would you give?
That's a really good question. I think my advice would be um to really question everything. Question why you believe what you believe. Um who taught it to you? Was there a reason behind that? Was it to control you? Was it to keep you in line? Was it because they thought it it is what was best for you? Um, prove things to yourself. That was a big one that Kira told me. Is she's like, look for your own answers. Do the research, find out what it is yourself. Um, one thing that I didn't say, I felt like Aberdeen was a very heavy, heavy town. And and she goes, "Well, research it and see if it was." Well, it turns out it is. It is a really heavy. There was some really not nice stuff that happened in Aberdeen. Um, and the other thing would be just trust your intuition, trust what you're feeling, what you're thinking. You're not crazy. And write it down, ask somebody, find a good somebody that you trust, that is on a good path, a path similar to, where you think you might be going, and ask him. Be like, hey, I thought I wanted my granny to call me, and then my granny called me. Am I psychic? What does that mean? Don't be afraid to ask the questions, but uh explore the breadcrumbs, explore the trails. You're gonna get into a lot of stuff that a lot of people do, when people are first on the path. Crystals, herbs, Reiki, tarot, all of those things are they're like the big four that everybody just goes right down those paths. If none of those are for you, that's totally okay, you know. So just explore your path. And I would say be wary of people who are coming at you hard and fast, who want to mentor you. People who are saying, like, oh, I see that you're so powerful. I see that you have these abilities. Be a little mindful. There are varying shades of gray into black, and there are people who are on those darker sides, and they can see pure, true
Light.
intention and power and light.
Hmm.
Yes. And they will feed off of that. So I think the other cautionary tale I would say would be, just if anybody comes at you really hard and fast and they're like, "Oh, you're powerful. You're really, really look at that." And if they tell you that they work with different deities or things like that, that's okay. That's okay. I do that myself. But look into who they're working with. If they're coming at you with some darker things, maybe put the brakes on that as you're just on that path, because that might be a road you might not want to go down. I mean, it might be your road, but
Yeah.
you're not meant to go down those roads early on. So if somebody is like, "Oh, I'm working with this dark goddess," and they're trying to pull you down that way, pay attention to that. And that
Yeah.
comes from personal experience. Like I said, you may be meant to work with those goddesses down the road, when you're more mature and more aware. Um,
Yeah. Right. And something that I became aware of very early on in during from my spiritual awakening was the fact that what I hear it called is the false light.
Hmm.
So it's, people that portray themselves as, being of the light and being good and all of
Hmm.
this, but it's a facade. It's not real.
Right.
There's something deeper. It's spiritual ego. It's not, it's not, and you can feel it inside. You can
Hmm.
feel because your body will let you know, does what
Yeah.
this person does what this person say, or is what this person saying resonating with me? Like, you can feel it in your body. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to close this up. If you want to just let people know where they can find you and just provide any closing thoughts that you want to give to the audience.
Sure, thank you. Well, first of all, this has been amazing and so much fun. Thank you for having me on. Starting in January of 2026, I'm on a break from my channel right now. You can find me on YouTube at Conversations with Christy. In 2026, we're going to be taking a deep dive into how science, it's I haven't officially come up with the name, but I'm thinking like the intersection of science and spirituality or the science of spirituality. But we're going to be looking at science, meaning, neuroscience, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, trauma, uh, psychology, all of that stuff. We're going to be looking at that, and then we're going to be weaving that into our spiritual practice and working with tarot cards and elements and archetypes and really kind of going down this path of deeper healing, understanding our bodies, feeling safe in our bodies, and then moving that into a spiritual realm. So that's what we're looking at for 2026 over on the channel. I'm really excited about it. It's what I'm putting together right now, so I'm very excited. So that's where you can find me. And well, as of right now, that's the only place you can find me. And then I guess my final thought would be to, you know, just remember that, you know, we might have multiple lifetimes and life experiences, but you will only ever be in this body and be this person having this experience once. So make it worthwhile. Learn all that you want to learn, do all that you want to do, forgive all that you're able to forgive so that you're not carrying that with you through the rest of this life and into your future lives. Do your best to learn the lessons now so you don't have to keep repeating them. And we actually just watched Joe Dirt the other day, and this one is zinging through my head. So, life's a garden, man. Dig it. Just
Yeah.
go have an amazing experience. You're gonna have your days, you're gonna get down, you're not alone, you've got friends. If you're really struggling, please reach out to your friends. They're there for you. You're not a burden, you're not a problem. And if you are really, really struggling, please call 988. You can call or text 988. And if you need any sobriety support, I always like to say um, smartrecovery.org is a great place to go for something like that. So, yeah, and go conquer your world as only you can. We'll be here to help you light the way.
Absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And thank you for sharing those resources. This has been such a beautiful conversation, and I learned so much about you that I didn't even know. And I know a lot about you. So, so this was so fun and just really filled my cup up. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared and for sharing your wisdom. And thank you for being you. I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Course.
You're still here, which means you watched the entire thing. I hope you loved her story as much as I did. If you want more stories like this, I invite you to subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and be sure to go follow Christy on her YouTube channel, conversations with Christy. I am getting guests lined up and going to capture some stories. So I hope to see you back here soon. Take care.